Family called me selfish for refusing to give away my apartment to the golden child. The bankruptcy that followed proved me right. Hey friends! Got a sec? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe. It's quick for you, but it really means a lot to the channel. Alright, let's dive into today's story. Original post. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I need perspective from people who aren't emotionally involved in this situation. I'm a 30-year-old software developer who has worked incredibly hard to get where I am today. After growing up in a modest household where money was always tight, I put myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, landed a position at a tech startup that eventually got acquired, and managed to save enough to buy a downtown loft 2 years ago. The apartment cost me $400,000, and it represents everything I've worked for. It's nothing luxurious, just a one-bedroom loft in a converted warehouse district, but it's mine. I've spent countless weekends fixing it up, learning basic plumbing and electrical work from YouTube videos, and turning it into exactly what I wanted. The exposed brick walls hold my collection of vintage programming books, and the large windows flood the space with natural light that makes working from home actually enjoyable. My younger sister is 26 and works as a barista at a local coffee shop. She's creative, artistic, and has always marched to the beat of her own drum, which I respect. She got engaged 6 months ago to her boyfriend of 2 years, who works at a music store. They're planning a wedding for next spring, and from what I've heard, it's going to be quite the production. They're talking about a venue that costs more than what most people spend on a car. Last Sunday, my parents invited me over for what I thought would be a normal family dinner. My mother made her famous lasagna, and everything seemed pleasant until dessert. That's when my father cleared his throat and said they needed to discuss something important about the wedding. We've been thinking about wedding gifts, my mother started, exchanging glances with my father. And we believe the most meaningful gift you could give your sister would be your apartment. I literally choked on my coffee. When I finally stopped coughing, I asked them to repeat what they'd said, certain I'd misunderstood. Your sister needs stable housing more than you do, my father explained, as if this was the most logical thing in the world. You're single, you work in tech, you can easily rent something smaller or even move back here temporarily. But married couples need that foundation, that security. I sat there, stunned, as they continued laying out their reasoning. They mentioned how I make good money and could easily get another place, while my sister and her fiancé are just starting out and deserve a proper home. My mother even suggested that since I work remotely most of the time, I don't really need to live downtown anyway. You've always been the responsible one, my mother added, reaching across the table to pat my hand. We knew we could count on you to do the right thing for family. The thing is, my sister was sitting right there, nodding along as if this was all perfectly reasonable. She started talking about how they could convert my home office into a nursery eventually, and how the neighborhood would be perfect for raising children. She'd already thought about repainting the walls and removing my built-in bookshelves to open up the space. I tried to explain that this wasn't just about money, this was my home, something I'd worked years to achieve. But my father interrupted, saying that family means making sacrifices, and that successful people have an obligation to help those who are struggling. When I pointed out that giving away a $400,000 apartment wasn't a typical wedding gift, my mother's expression hardened. We're not asking you to give it away, she said. We're asking you to gift it to your sister. There's a difference. It stays in the family. I asked if they were planning to contribute anything of similar value, and the room went quiet. My parents exchanged uncomfortable looks before my mother said they'd already promised to pay for the wedding dress and flowers, which would cost them nearly $5,000. $5,000. They expected me to hand over an apartment worth 80 times that amount because they were covering the dress and flowers. My sister finally spoke up, her voice taking on that tone she's used since we were kids when she wanted something. I just thought my big brother would want me to be happy. You've always been successful at everything. Can't you let me have this one thing? One thing. A $400,000 apartment is one thing. I told them I needed time to think, which apparently was the wrong response. My father's face turned red, and he launched into a lecture about how disappointed he was in my selfishness. My mother started crying, saying she never thought she'd raised such a materialistic son. My sister stormed out, but not before telling me I was ruining her wedding and her entire future. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I've received multiple text messages from various family members. My aunt called me heartless. My grandmother left a voicemail saying she was praying for my soul. Even my cousin, who I haven't spoken to in 2 years, reached out to tell me I should be ashamed of myself. The thing that gets me is that nobody seems to think this request is unreasonable. They all keep saying variations of the same thing, that I'm single, that I make good money, that I should help my sister. Nobody seems to care that I spent years saving for that down payment, that I've put countless hours and money into renovating the place, or that it's my home. I've always had a good relationship with my family. I've lent my sister money when she needed it, which was never paid back, but I never pushed the issue. I've helped my parents with their computer problems, their taxes, even contributed when they needed a new roof last year. But apparently, nothing is ever enough. Am I really being selfish here? Should family obligation extend to giving away your home? I feel like I'm going crazy, like maybe there's something I'm not seeing that everyone else is. But I can't shake the feeling that what they're asking for is completely insane. Update number 1, 2 weeks later. Thank you to everyone who responded to my original post. Your comments gave me the clarity I desperately needed. I want to share what's happened since then, because it's been quite a journey. After reading through hundreds of responses confirming that no, I wasn't crazy, and that my family's request was indeed outrageous, I reached out to my college roommate. He's now a licensed therapist, and while he couldn't officially treat me due to our friendship, he offered to meet for coffee and help me process everything. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, not far from my loft. As I explained the situation, his expression grew increasingly concerned. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment before asking, "How often has your family put you in positions like this?" That question opened floodgates I didn't know existed. As we talked, patterns began emerging that I'd never noticed before. How I was always expected to be the responsible one, while my sister was allowed to be the creative free spirit. How my achievements were minimized while her struggles were romanticized. How my parents would often frame unreasonable requests as tests of my love for the family. "Remember when you got into MIT?" he reminded me. "Your parents threw a party, but it was actually your sister's graduation from her 2-week photography workshop. Your acceptance was mentioned briefly, almost as an afterthought." He was right. I'd forgotten about that, or maybe I'd just normalized it. We spent 3 hours at that cafe, and he helped me practice something called boundary setting. We actually role-played different scenarios, with him playing my family members while I practiced responses. "I understand you're disappointed, but giving away my home is not something I'm willing to do. I love my sister and want her to be happy, but her happiness shouldn't require my homelessness. If family means making sacrifices, then everyone should be contributing equally." Armed with these practiced responses and a newfound understanding of my family dynamics, I invited my parents and sister to meet me at a neutral location, a restaurant downtown. I specifically chose a public place to minimize the chance of explosive reactions. They arrived looking hopeful, probably thinking I was going to announce my capitulation. My sister had even brought a folder, which I later learned contained floor plans she'd drawn up for my loft. I kept my voice calm and steady as I delivered the news. "I've given this a lot of thought, and I will not be giving my apartment to anyone. It's my home, and I'm keeping it." The silence was deafening. My mother's face crumpled, and tears immediately began flowing. My father's jaw clenched, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. My sister, however, surprised me. Instead of tears or shouting, she laughed. "I told them you wouldn't do it," she said, shaking her head. "I told them you only care about yourself." "That's not true," I responded, using one of the phrases I'd practiced. "I care about all of you very much. But caring about family doesn't mean sacrificing everything I've worked for." My father slammed his hand on the table, causing nearby diners to turn and stare. "You're choosing a pile of bricks over your own flesh and blood." "No," I said firmly. "I'm choosing to keep what I've earned through my own hard work. If you want to help sister with housing, you're welcome to sell your own house and downsize." The look of shock on their faces would have been comical if the situation weren't so painful. My mother sputtered, But that's our home. We've lived there for 25 years. And I've worked for my home for 8 years, saving, planning, sacrificing. Why is your attachment to your home valid but mine isn't?" My sister stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You know what? Forget it. I don't need your stupid apartment. We'll figure it out ourselves, like we always do. Because that's what real adults do. They don't rely on handouts from family members who think they're better than everyone else." The irony of her calling my apartment a handout, while simultaneously demanding I give it to her, was not lost on me, but I let it slide. As they prepared to leave, my father delivered his parting shot. "Don't expect to be part of this wedding. You've made your choice." "I understand," I replied, though my heart was breaking. "I hope someday you'll realize that what you asked of me was unreasonable." They left, and I sat there for another hour, nursing a cold cup of coffee and wondering if I'd just lost my family forever. The aftermath was swift and brutal. I was officially uninvited from the wedding via a text message from my sister. My parents sent a formal email. Yes, an email, stating that until I came to my senses, I was not welcome at family gatherings. The extended family bombardment intensified, with relatives I'd forgotten existed coming out of the woodwork to express their disappointment in my selfishness. But something interesting happened. A few relatives, ones who had been quiet initially, began reaching out privately. My uncle, my father's brother, called to say he thought the request was insane and that he was proud of me for standing my ground. A cousin admitted she'd been pressured to give her car to another family member years ago and still regretted complying. These small supports meant everything during those dark weeks. Update number 2, 6 months later. It's been 6 months since I refused to give away my apartment, and I need to share what's transpired because it's been a roller coaster that I never could have anticipated. The wedding happened last month. From what I heard through the family grapevine, my uncle kept me informed, it was indeed the extravagant affair my sister had dreamed of. She wore a designer dress, they had a live band, and the venue was stunning. The photos on social media looked like something out of a magazine. Notably absent from those photos, me. But here's where things get interesting. 2 months before the wedding, my sister and her fiancé signed a lease on a luxury apartment they couldn't really afford, apparently to prove they didn't need my help. The rent was $3,200 a month. Absolutely insane for their combined income of maybe $70,000 a year. But they were determined to show everyone, especially me, that they were doing just fine. The wedding, I learned, cost close to $50,000. My parents contributed their promised $5,000. The rest. Credit cards and loans. My sister had convinced her fiancé that they'd easily pay it off with wedding gifts and that their love would conquer any financial challenges. 3 weeks after the wedding, reality hit like a freight train. My uncle called me one evening with updates. Apparently, the newlyweds were already fighting constantly about money. They couldn't afford their apartment and were eating ramen most nights. The minimum payments on their credit cards were eating up most of their paychecks. My sister's husband had started working double shifts, which meant they barely saw each other. When they did, they fought. Then came the bombshell. My sister's husband had suggested they should have taken a smaller wedding and used the money for a house down payment instead. This led to an explosive fight where my sister allegedly threw their wedding album at him and screamed that he was ruining her life with his negativity. A month later, my aunt, who still talks to me despite the family rift, informed me that my sister's husband had moved back in with his parents temporarily. The word divorce was being thrown around, just 2 months after their dream wedding. It was during this separation that something unexpected happened. My sister, desperate and depressed, started seeing a therapist through her work's employee assistance program. She initially went to figure out how to save her marriage, but instead, she began uncovering some hard truths about herself. Yesterday, I received a text from an unknown number. It was my sister, using a friend's phone because she knew I might not answer if I saw her name. "Can we meet? Just us. Please." Against my better judgment, or maybe because I missed my sister despite everything, I agreed. We met at a small cafe, ironically, the same one where I'd had coffee with my therapist friend months earlier. She looked different. Tired, certainly, but also somehow more mature. The entitled princess attitude was gone, replaced by something more genuine. "I owe you an apology," she started, before I'd even sat down properly. "Actually, I owe you more than that, but an apology is all I have right now." She explained how therapy had opened her eyes to patterns she'd never recognized. How our parents had always pitted us against each other, with her as the baby who needed protection and me as the provider who should need nothing. How she'd internalized the belief that her struggles made her more deserving, while my successes meant I should have less. "My therapist asked me a simple question," she said, her voice shaking. She asked, "If your brother was married and you were single, would you give him your apartment?" And I immediately said no, that would be crazy. Then she asked why I expected you to do it, and I couldn't answer. I just sat there, realizing what an entitled brat I'd been. She told me about the disaster her life had become. The debt, the failing marriage, the realization that a fancy wedding meant nothing if you couldn't afford groceries afterward. Her husband had agreed to couples counseling, and they were slowly working through their issues, but they'd already decided to break their lease and move in with his parents to save money. "The worst part," she said, tears flowing freely now, "is that you tried to teach me these lessons years ago. Remember when I wanted that expensive art program I never finished? You told me to start with community classes first. When I wanted a luxury car on my barista salary, you suggested something reliable and affordable. I called you unsupportive and cheap. But you were just trying to protect me from myself." We talked for 3 hours. She shared how she and her husband were now taking financial literacy classes together, how they'd created a strict budget to pay off their debt, and how they'd realized that love does not, in fact, conquer poor financial planning. Then she surprised me with an invitation. We're doing a vow renewal ceremony next month, she said. Not the big fancy thing, just immediate family and close friends in his parents' backyard. It's partly to recommit to each other with more realistic expectations, and partly to symbolically start over. I know I have no right to ask, but I'd really like you to be there. I told her I'd think about it, and I meant it. The hurt was still there, but so was the love for my sister that had been buried under all the drama. As we prepared to leave, she said something that stuck with me: "Thank you for not enabling me. If you'd given me that apartment, I never would have learned these lessons. I would have just continued living beyond my means, expecting others to sacrifice for my happiness. Your no might have saved my marriage and my future." Final update, 8 months later. I attended the vow renewal ceremony last weekend, and I wanted to share this final update because it feels like we've all come full circle in the most unexpected way. The ceremony was the complete opposite of the original wedding. Instead of a $15,000 venue, it was in a backyard decorated with string lights and wildflowers my sister and her friends had picked themselves. Instead of a designer dress, she wore a simple sundress she already owned. Instead of a 5-course meal, it was a potluck where everyone brought something. It was beautiful in its simplicity. My parents were there, and while things were still tense between us, they'd also been doing work. My mother approached me during the reception with tears in her eyes. "Your sister told us what her therapist said about the apartment question," she admitted. "And we realized we would never have asked her to give up her home for you. We've been horrible parents, creating this dynamic where you were always expected to sacrifice. We're seeing a family counselor now, trying to understand why we did this." My father, never one for emotional conversations, simply shook my hand and said, "The apartment looks good. You've done well for yourself." Coming from him, it was practically a declaration of love. But the most meaningful moment came during the ceremony itself. My sister had asked to say something to the guests before renewing her vows. She stood there, holding her husband's hand, and spoke directly to me. 8 months ago, I demanded something from my brother that I had no right to ask for. I wanted him to give up his home, his security, his hard-earned achievement, because I believed my wants were more important than his needs. When he said no, I called him selfish. But his refusal was the greatest gift he could have given me. She continued, "If he had given me that apartment, I would have learned nothing. I would have continued believing that the world owed me happiness without effort, that love meant taking from others without consideration. Instead, his boundary forced me to face reality, to work for what I want, and to value what I have. So thank you, brother, for loving me enough to say no." There wasn't a dry eye in that backyard, including mine. After the ceremony, we talked more. She showed me their financial planning spreadsheet. They'd paid off $15,000 in debt in 6 months through extreme budgeting and extra shifts. They were now saving for a modest home in the suburbs, something they could actually afford. Her husband had been promoted to manager at the music store, and she was taking online courses to become a bookkeeper, discovering she had a knack for numbers when they weren't her own finances. "We have coffee every Tuesday now," she told me, referring to our new tradition. "It's the highlight of my week. Just talking, no asking for anything, no guilt trips. Just 2 siblings actually getting to know each other for the first time." She was right. Our Tuesday coffee meetings had become sacred. We talked about everything: work stress, relationships, books we were reading, shows we were watching. For the first time in our lives, we were building a relationship based on mutual respect rather than assigned family roles. My parents have been working hard too. Family therapy has revealed generational patterns they're trying to break. My father grew up in a household where the eldest son was expected to provide for everyone, and he'd unconsciously passed that on to me. My mother came from poverty and had always feared it, leading her to prioritize financial security over emotional well-being, ironically pushing for decisions that would have damaged both. They've apologized properly now, not the conditional "we're sorry but you should have" type, but real, genuine acknowledgement of the harm they caused. We have monthly dinners now, with clear boundaries. No one asks anyone for money, no one's success is minimized, and no one's struggles are romanticized. It's still a work in progress, but it's progress nonetheless. As for my loft, it remains my sanctuary, my achievement, my home. But now it's also something else, a symbol of the boundary that saved my family. My sister jokes that they should put up a plaque, "The apartment that taught us all how to adult." Last week, she sent me a listing for a small house they're considering buying. It's modest, needs work, but it's within their budget. She wanted my opinion, not my money, just my thoughts as someone who'd been through the home buying process. I spent hours reviewing the inspection report with them, sharing what I'd learned from my own experience. "You know," she said as we pored over the documents, "I used to resent your success. Now I see it as a resource, not financially, but knowledge-wise. You've been through this, you know what to look for. That's worth more than any handout. Her husband added, "We actually have you to thank for our marriage surviving. If you'd given us that apartment, we never would have learned to work together, to struggle together, to build something together. That adversity, as much as it sucked, made us stronger." They close on their house next month, a small 2-bedroom that needs updating but has good bones, as they say. They're planning to do the renovations themselves, learning from YouTube just like I did. My sister sends me progress pictures every few days, proud of every small improvement they make. My therapist friend, who I still meet for coffee occasionally, remarked on how much has changed. "Most families never recover from something like this," he said. "The fact that you all did the work, that's remarkable." He's right. It would have been easier to stay estranged, to hold on to the hurt and the anger. But we chose the harder path: growth, accountability, and genuine reconciliation. My sister and her husband chose to face their financial reality instead of living in denial. My parents chose to examine their toxic patterns instead of defending them. And I chose to hold my boundary while still leaving the door open for healing. The whole experience taught me something valuable about love and boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Sometimes protecting your own well-being isn't selfish, it's necessary. And sometimes, when someone shows you they've genuinely changed, the bravest thing you can do is believe them. My sister and I have plans to go furniture shopping for her new house next weekend. She's saved up enough for a couch, and she wants my opinion on which one to get. It's a simple thing, furniture shopping with your sister, but it represents so much more. It's a relationship rebuilt on equal footing, where both parties bring value, where no one is the hero or the victim, where we're just two siblings figuring out life together. The family group chat, once a source of anxiety and guilt trips, has become something lighter. We share memes, recipes, and little victories. My sister posted a photo of their first mortgage payment with the caption, "Adulting level, homeowner." My parents responded with heart emojis instead of offers to help with the payment. Progress. Do I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd given in? If I'd handed over my keys and walked away from my home? I think we all would have continued our destructive patterns until something even worse happened. My sister might have lost her marriage entirely. My parents might have lost both their children. And I might have lost myself, becoming nothing more than a wallet with family obligations. Instead, one firm no started a chain reaction that led to growth, healing, and genuine connection. My loft remains my home, but now it's also a testament to the power of boundaries and the strength it takes to maintain them, even when everyone you love is telling you you're wrong. To anyone facing similar pressure from family, your achievements are yours, your home is yours, and your boundaries are valid. Family should lift each other up, not tear one person down to build up another. Love doesn't mean giving until you have nothing left. It means giving what you can while maintaining your own stability and self-respect. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone isn't what they're asking for, but the opportunity to grow beyond their current limitations. My sister thanks me regularly now, not for anything I've given her, but for what I didn't give her. That apartment she so desperately wanted. She now says it would have been a curse disguised as a blessing. We still meet for coffee every Tuesday. This week, she brought her laptop to show me the renovation plans for their house. She's learned to use design software and has mapped out every change they want to make over the next 5 years. It's ambitious but realistic, detailed but flexible. She's become the planner, the responsible one, roles that were never available to her when I was filling them by default. "You know what the funny thing is," she said, closing her laptop after our planning session. "I'm happier now, in our tiny fixer-upper, than I ever would have been in your loft. Because this is ours, something we're building together, something we earned. Your apartment is beautiful, but it's yours. This house, it's becoming beautiful, and it's ours." That's the real happy ending here, not that everyone got what they wanted, but that everyone got what they needed. My parents needed to confront their biases. My sister needed to develop self-reliance. Her husband needed to learn to stand up for financial sanity. And I needed to learn that holding boundaries doesn't mean losing love. Sometimes it means finding a deeper, more authentic version of it. The loft that almost tore our family apart ended up being the catalyst that brought us together, stronger and healthier than before. And every Tuesday, over coffee, my sister and I build the relationship we should have had all along. One based on mutual respect, genuine interest, and the understanding that love doesn't mean sacrifice, it means support.